Hello everyone, it's Matt from The Pen Habit. I'm glad to have you back for another pen review video. And in today's review, we are going to be taking a look at another new to me pen brand. This is an Arizona-based machine shop slash pen maker called Kustoms. Now, if you're active in the fountain pen community, you're probably real familiar with Kustoms pens. Kustoms started their entry into the pen world through Kickstarter, as a lot of pen manufacturers have been doing of late. They've run a couple of very successful Kickstarters. They did both and do both, kind of ballpoint rollerball pens and fountain pens. I've been meaning to pick one of these up for a long time, just haven't gotten around to it until I ran into the Custom boys at the the LA pen show, excuse me, and picked up one of these little beauties to play around with. So, talk you through it. Comes in this very simple cardboard box, Kustoms, fully machined in the USA. Quality writing instruments. Perhaps my favorite thing is what's on the back here. Dozens of satisfied customers. So they've got a good sense of humor about what they do. Now, Kustoms pens are all machined pens, meaning that all of them are metal, and well, not all of them. Most of them are metal, and they are turned on lathes, etc., and fully machined pens. They're not die cast or injection molded or any of that kind of stuff. Most of their pens are made out of aluminum. You can also get pens and parts of pens in other metals like brass or copper. Now, one of the things that I find really interesting about the Custom pen line is that they have kind of reintroduced the concept of customization, of pen customization, in a way that I don't feel like really many other manufacturers have since maybe Esterbrook back in the 50s. All of the parts of their line fit together. They're in different colors. You can buy them differently. So you can get a pen that's made out of pink aluminum with a blue section, blue aluminum section, or an all copper pen with a brass section, or whatever it is. You can get different combinations, so you don't just have to buy one pen. You can also pick between steel and titanium nibs in a variety of different sizes, so you can kind of customize your pen using the interchangeable parts method, which a lot of pen companies used to do, but they've kind of gotten away from in recent years. Well, not in recent years. They've gotten away from it as fountain pens have become less popular. The economies of scale don't exist anymore, so it's a little harder to do that the way companies used to be able to do it, like Esterbrook. Inside the box here, you have, again, it's a pretty low-key, very low-cost packaging, which I kind of like. It helps keeps their costs down, but it does a very good job of protecting the pen. So you can unfold the little cardboard flap and remove the pen. I'll set that aside for a moment. It also comes with information about the ink, about the fountain pen and rollerball versions, filling instructions, and the like. And then they give you 5 cartridges, which is pretty slick. I don't really know of any pen company that gives you 5 cartridges when you buy the pen, so that's kind of cool. Then we move on to the pen itself. Now, this is the model I went for. This is the olive green anodized aluminum, and I got it with a copper section. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the section. But here's the design layout. So this pen, as I mentioned, is machined. I really like the profile of the pen. It looks very modern. What I said when I was doing my written review is this reminds me of kind of the background scenery in the Mass Effect video game series. So if you're a video gamer and you've played Mass Effect, you know what I'm talking about. But this feels very modern, almost kind of like a space station-y feel to it, which I like a lot. The clip is machined, and it's very, very rigid. There's basically no give to the clip at all. So you can, you might have a little bit of a difficult time slipping this over jeans, but it's rock solid. It fits into a slot that's cut into the cap and then held in place by these 2 little bolts here. Got the kind of the machined ridge here to give you a faux finial. The cap tapers seamlessly into the barrel, not seamlessly, but tapers evenly, flushly into the barrel, and then the barrel tapers down a little bit. You've got kind of a beveled edge here and then a very flat bottom. The finish on this is beautiful. Now, I will say that they do these in the anodized finishes in small batches, and there is a little bit of color difference between them. So what you see in this video may be a little bit different. I know olive green in particular, they've had a little bit of color variation. I don't mind that. I actually kind of like the fact that you can almost identify which batch a pen came from by the color, but I think they are trying to nail down a little bit more of the color consistency. Alls I got to say is I really like this olive green color. I've got a lot of green pens, but I don't have any pens in this kind of olivey green color, which I really like a lot. The cap comes off in 1 3/4 turns to reveal the copper section that I talked a little bit about. The threads are, and you can probably see it in profile here, the threads are pretty sharp. These are threads that if you hold on the threads, you're probably going to feel it. So this is one where if you've got a high grip, like I tend to, you're either going to have to retrain yourself to move down to the grip section a little bit, or just be used to the fact that you're going to feel these threads underneath. It is a cartridge converter pen. Using international standard converters or long or short cartridges. Obviously, as an aluminum and copper pen, you wouldn't want to eyedropper this one. That would be bad. But it's got a nice feel to it. Now, the copper section, I kind of debated on whether or not to get the copper section. They had either a copper or a brass pen there at the LA show that I tried, and it was really heavy. So I knew I didn't want to go a full copper or full brass route, but I did like a little bit of extra weight down toward the nib. So I find that putting a copper section on this pen gives it a really nice balance. It helps it kind of sit very, very nicely in the hand. I also think it just looks really cool. I love the way that copper patinas over time. This is already patinaed quite a bit in just the few weeks that I've had it. Yeah, so I really like that shape. Now, the section does tend to be just a tiny bit short for me, but I can still, you know, with the aforementioned thread issue, I can still hold it down here and be okay. Another little interesting design piece is they have kind of inset the nib unit. So usually the nib unit kind of comes flush with the edge of the section. Here they've inset it a little bit, so it makes the nib look a little bit shorter than it actually is. This uses number 6 nib. This is a Bach nib, and as I mentioned, you can get it in steel or titanium. I went with the steel. It's a beautiful nib, and I'll get to that when we get to the writing sample. So in general, this is a really robust kind of knock-around pen. Oh, really quickly, the pen can kind of post, but not real well and not securely, and you run the risk of marring the finish, so this is not a pen I would recommend posting. Like I said, the finish on this is beautiful, and it's smooth and satiny and really, really nice. I haven't gotten any nicks or mars in it, but then again, I'm pretty easy on my pens, and I haven't had it for that long. It is an aluminum pen, though, so you get some of the pluses and minuses that come along with that. This is a rock-solid pen. This is a pen you could probably run over with your car, and it would be fine. Wouldn't recommend doing that, but I mean, clip it to your pants pocket, throw it in a purse. You're not going to need to worry about this pen breaking on you. It is just as solid as really a rod of metal, a rod of aluminum. Really, really nicely made, very tight tolerances. This feels solid and robust and very well put together. Now, with some of these, I call them knockabout pens, you do run the risk a little bit of dinging up the surface and losing some of that anodized finish. just know that's a possibility. I mean, it's a possibility of scratching your pens no matter what. But with this, it might be a little bit more noticeable because if you ding the surface, you're going to come to silver material underneath. And in theory, these could look pretty beat up, kind of like the Kaweco Stonewash pens. It doesn't look like that yet, and it probably won't because I am, like I said, very easy on my pens, but that is a possibility. Okay. Let me go ahead and do a couple of comparisons for you, and then I will also walk you through the measurements, and then we will go ahead and do a writing sample. Okay, so here is the Kustoms ink fountain pen, and then we'll look at the usual cadre of comparison fodder. We've got the Pelikan M1000, the Pelikan M800 for size comparison, and actually, they're pretty close in size, which may be why this feels so comfortable in my hand. And then here is the Montblanc 149 for comparison sake there. And if you're looking at comparisons for slightly less expensive pens, and by slightly I mean significantly, here is the TWSBI Eco. Again, pretty similar in size. The Lamy All-Star and the Pilot Metropolitan. So there you go. And if we go to the measurements, you are looking at 137 millimeters when it is capped. Uncapped, 126.2. A very comfortable, very nice length in the hand. Regardless of whether I hold it in the web of my hand or up on the knuckle, which is kind of how I've started holding my pens, it's long enough, and the section is concave enough that it doesn't feel like it's too short at all. And as I mentioned, it can kind of be posted. I'm not going to post it real hard because I don't want to mar the finish, but it's not secure. It's not really meant to be posted, and that is 177.3 millimeters when it is posted. In terms of diameters, you're looking right here in the middle of the section at 10.2 millimeters. And the widest point of both the cap and the barrel is right here in where they join up. And those are both 14.6 millimeters. And then because it's a metal pen, as you would expect, it's going to be a little on the heavy side. This is 30 grams uncapped, and you add the cap on, you're looking at 47. So a hefty pen, not ridiculously heavy like the copper or brass versions of this pen would be, but still enough for you to know that it's there. It's got some good heft to it. Okay, so let me go ahead and do a little bit of writing for you, show you the pen and this Bock nib, and we will take it from there. So here we go. This is the Kustoms ink fountain pen, and we are using a steel medium nib. The ink is Sailor Gentle Epinard. And we are on a Rhodia dot pad. Okay, so here is the quote for the day. Okay, so this nib, I don't have a lot of Bock steel nibs in my collection. I've had a couple. usually made for, specifically for different retailers. This is really my first kind of out-of-the-box Bock steel nib that I've played around with too much. And I have to say, I am pretty darn impressed with it. It's smooth and very, very beautifully ground. Sometimes on these round nibs, you get kind of an edge. They're almost ground stub-like. They paid real close attention to the way they ground this nib, and you can see in this macro photo here, it's very round and very smooth. The top of the nib is, the gap between the tines is perfectly level. The nib is just a little bit on the dry side, and I will probably spend some time inking this up or improving the ink flow just a little bit on this, but it's very, very smooth. And were it not for the kind of dryness, and I can show you what I mean here, it's not the driest nib in the world, but it's also not the wettest nib either. It does tend to run a little on the dry side. It also has a little bit of that, I'm using a lot of air quotes today, but that singing quality about it. It makes a little bit of a noise, and I'll move this up to see if you can hear it on the microphone, but it almost kind of sounds like a marker. Aside from the ink flow issue, I really like this nib. It's a rigid nib. It doesn't have a lot of give to it, but you can push a little bit of extra ink flow out of there if you want to and get that nicer. And there is just a tiny little hint of a cross stroke hiccup. It's not a hard start per se, but there is a little bit of a hiccup. But aside from that, I wrote the whole review out by hand. No ink starvation issues, no skipping, no hard starting. It was just a rock solid writer. Now, one of the downsides of this kind of pen construction, and I've run into it in other pens as well, is that the ink does not come with an inner cap. It's just metal straight through. And these seals, or these threads, while very smooth and nice and decently tight, don't seem to do a great job in keeping the pen airtight. So I find that this is a pen, if I leave it sitting for 3 or 4 days, I will have some hard start and ink flow issues for a little while before the ink flow gets going. And depending on how long I leave it, sometimes I'll have to prime the pump a little bit, just twist the converter. But I only have to do that once when I very first start writing. Once the ink gets going, it stays going. So just be aware that if you're the kind of person like me who probably unwisely inks up 20 to 25 pens at once and sometimes won't revisit a pen for 3 or 4 weeks, this may not be the best pen for that because the ink could dry out and get a little extra concentrated. As it is, you'll see there's a perfect example. I left this uncapped while I was talking, and this does seem to dry out pretty quickly, all things considered. Reverse writer, very good reverse writer. A little bit more feedback, but nice fine line. Works pretty well there. And overall, I have to say, I am quite impressed with this Keras Kustoms ink. I like the fact that they're a small shop, that they did Kickstarters, that they've managed to develop a nice following on social media. They are renowned for really, really excellent customer support. I almost called it customer success because that's what we call it at my work. Gotta love those new AG business type terminologies. It's not customer support, it's customer success. In any case. Really, I love the feel of this pen in my hand. I like the little extra heft, even though I generally tend to go for lighter pens or plastic pens. The copper section for me just perfects the balance on this pen. Just sits it nicely in my hand, and I don't know why I'm doing this with my hands. Very, very nice feel in the hand. The nib is going to need just a touch of work, but this is such a minor amount of work, it's hardly worth mentioning. And like I said, I've been using this pen for almost a month now without working on it. And aside from that first starting issue when the pen sat for a couple of days, I just have not had any major issues with this pen at all. I barely had any issues, period. So really, really impressed with the pen. I will also tell you what else I'm impressed by, and that's the pen's price. Now, because this is kind of a choose your own adventure when it comes to pens, the price range can vary kind of wildly depending on what it is you get. But, you know, if you pick the base model of this pen is $95, which is a really nice price point, I think. It's a step up from the mass-produced injection molded pens like the TWSBI VAC 700 or the TWSBI 580, but it's not quite up to the standards of the gold nib, excuse me, I can't talk today, the Platinum 3776 or the Lamy 2000, which here in the US sell for about $150. The nib on this, I think, is smooth and well adjusted enough that this could compete with any of those pens. Like I said, it's a little on the dry side, but not so much that it's unusable by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't have perhaps quite the same mass-produced refinement that you might get on some of those pens, but that's actually one of the things I like about it. I like the fact that this feels like a much more, and I hate this term, but I'll use it anyway, artisanal product. It feels more craftsman-made and less factory-made, which I like a lot about this pen. And it's in a really good price point. Now, you add copper or brass, which will add to the cost. You go with a titanium nib instead of a steel nib. That will add to the cost as well. So it will vary a little bit, but even at the base model, which is an all-aluminum pen, I think $95 is really a nice price point for this pen. And considering it's all US made for those of you for whom that's important, that's something to know as well. I'll be real honest, I don't care so much about that, the fact that it's US made. What I do care about is that the people who are making it in-house and they really care about the quality. And this is a small company where they do their own machining in-house, they care about the quality, and I think that's wonderful. So anyway, this has been my review of the Keras Kustoms Ink, a pen I like a whole bunch, one that I plan on keeping around. This is going to be kind of my shop pen, for lack of a better term. I'm going to be using it like in my shed or when I'm out working in my garden. It'll be clipped to the side of my jeans so I can have something to jot down with, because it is that robust and that strong. So, if you have any questions or comments, as always, please feel free to leave them on YouTube or on penhabit.com. You can find me on all the social media hangouts, and we will see you here next time on The Pen Habit. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.